Okay, so this question is from your exam papers. It's page 87. The topic we're looking at is arithmetic. So that can include anything from VAT, tax, depreciation, compound interest, and income tax, amongst others. So let's start with this question. It says a computer was bought for €783, including the VAT at 23%. The important thing here is the word including. It says what was the cost excluding the VAT, in other words before the VAT was added. Now the mistake, so just to be clear, what I'm about to write is incorrect. What very often students do is they say 738 and they take off 23%. Okay, and they'll give their answer, and I'm saying to you that that cannot be done. You cannot, once you're given a figure that is including the VAT or including a percentage for some reason, you cannot just then subtract it to get the original. What you're going to use is a little formula. So the VAT before, the price before VAT is equal to number over 100 plus the VAT times 100. Little formula for you to learn off. Not in log table, so you need to know it off yourself. So let's use it. So the price before the VAT, the number 738 divided by 100 plus the VAT, which is 23, all times 100. When you pop that into your calculators, you're going to get 600. So that answers the first part of the question, what was the cost price excluding the VAT. And then there is a second part to be answered. It says how much VAT was paid. So to get the VAT, you're just going to say 738 minus 600, 138 euros. Okay, so the next part of the question says the computer was sold 6 months later on eBay for $500. What was the percentage loss? And it says the exchange rate on that day was €1 is to 132. Give your answer correct to one decimal place. So I think the first step here has to be to, in order to make a comparison, you need to convert the $500 into euros. So we're going to do that. We're going to say if €1 is equal to $132, well then if I want to get what $1 is, I have to divide both sides by 132. So now I know $1 is equal to 1 over 1.32. If I want to know what $500 is, I have to multiply both sides by 500. So $500 is going to equal to 378.79 euros. So next part of the question then says, well, now that we've got our $500 converted back into euros, we have to see, well, before we can get percentage loss, we have to actually have to find out what the loss was. So the person bought it for 738. That's coming down from part A, and it was sold for 378.79. So that means that the loss to the person was €359 and 21 cents. So then we need a little formula then for percentage loss. So I'll write this here. So percentage loss is equal to the loss over the original times 100. So we can use that little formula. So the loss is 359.21 over the original, which is 738, times that by 100 into your calculators, and you will get, and take note please, it does say give your answer correct to one decimal place. So for our answer here in our percentage, we're going to have 48.7%. So quite a lot. Okay, so moving on down to the C part of the question. It says that a man bought a car for €36,000. If it depreciates, or in other words, it loses value at 20% per annum by the reducing balance method, find its value after 3 years. So there are a couple of different ways that you can tackle this, but to keep it in line with another example that you've seen, we'll say at the end of year 1, we'll say the value will be 36,000. And if you've got a sharp calculator, it's nice and handy, you can just say minus 20%. So the value of the car at the end of year 1 will be 28,800. That gets carried forward obviously into year 2, and he's going to, at the beginning of year 2 it's worth 28,800, but he loses 20% of its value. So the car is now worth 23,040. And then on into year 3, this figure gets carried forward, so 23,040, he loses another 20%. And your answer there is going to be 18,432. Just in terms of taking off the 20%, some of you may have this is fine if you've got a Sharp calculator, but if you've got a Casio calculator, you won't be able to do this. Use the second function one to put in the percentage. So an alternative to this would be, for example, 23,040. If you multiply it by 0.8, so 0.2 is the decimal equivalent of 20%. So multiplying something by 0.8 will reduce it by 20%, and you'll notice that when you try that in your calculator, you'll still get 18432, and that could be repeated for each time here where you have to take off the 20%. So we'll need to remember this figure going forward. Okay, so next part of the question says, if the scrap value of the car after 3 years is 40% of its original, what was the original value? So if the scrap value of the car after 3 years is 40%, what is its original value? So we're going to need to take some of these figures forward. I think there's probably a little mistake in the question there. I think that should probably say, what is the scrap value? Okay, so its original value, I think the car started off, it was worth €36,000. The scrap value is 40% of its original. Now you have to be a little bit careful with this. You could, for example, if you wanted to find 40% of that, which is what you're trying to find, you could multiply it by 40% if you've got a Sharp calculator. If you've got a Casio, you could say 36,000. You could multiply that by 0.4 and you could get an answer. But if you're going to subtract a figure, the error here that sometimes people make is they subtract 40%. But if the car is worth 40% of its original, that means it has lost 60%. So if you are going to subtract, you'd need to say 36,000 minus 60%. So any of those versions will work for you. And you'll get 14,400. Okay, again, I think we might need to remember that figure for the last part of the question. So, part 3 of the question says, what is the man's percentage loss? So, we need to realize it's percentage loss, so we're going to be using our formula from earlier on again. So it's loss over the original times 100. So what is the man's percentage loss if he sells the car for its depreciation value? So there's the first thing we have to do. And then we're also asked, what's his loss if he scraps the car after 3 years? In other words, using the figure above the 14,400. So we have two things to do. So we'll write out this formula twice. Let's deal with the depreciation value first of all. The value of the car was 36,000 euros, and we have to take from that, we're just going to take our figure from earlier on, which was 18,432. Oh, sorry, my apologies. The 18,432, that's its current value. So to find out how much it has lost, yeah, we need our 36,000. We need to take that figure away. When we subtract it, you're going to end up with 17,568. So that's its value now, or sorry, that's how much has been lost. So we'll just pop it all into the formula. So it's going to be 17,568 over the original value, which is 36,000. And when you type that into the calculator, you're going to get a loss of 48.8%. We need to repeat the process now using the scrap value. So the car was originally worth 36,000 euros. The scrap value, or what it's worth now, is 14,400. So when we subtract those two figures, we see that we've a loss of 21,600. So we need to take that value now and just pop it into our formula. So 21,600 over the original value, 36,000, times 100. That will help us work out our percentage, 60%.